designed to encourage, empower, and educate real estate professionals by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and this is Calibrate Real Estate. Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and back-to-back good friends. I interviewed Eric Rollo last time. Brad Allen coming at you from Columbia, South Carolina. Say hello to our podcast audience, Brad.
What's up, people? How are we?
Brad is a 30 under 30 honoree, a good buddy of mine. I literally have spent hours with this dude. I wish I had the beard that he has if you're watching on YouTube. Brad's the broker in charge of the Art of Real Estate based in Columbia, South Carolina. They also have a Greenville office. They have eclipsed 20 team members. And Brad has been doing this thing since 2013 with his business partner, Mary Lane Sloan. Brad and Mary Lane were both some of our inaugural interviews in the first 10 episodes. So if you want to learn more about hiring, Brad and Eric did a great hiring episode, episode 4. And then Mary Lane was a few episodes later. Brad, let's get talking right about how to actually start a real estate brokerage firm. As we're prepping for this, and you and I have spent a bunch of time together over the past 4 years, you know, I have a startup. Calibrate Real Estate is in our third year. Actually, as we tape this, we're about to hit our third anniversary. You and I had talked about this. Thank you very much for saying that you guys started in 2013. And so for anybody out there that's actually interested in saying, you know what, I've been at another brokerage company for a period of time. I've hit that required prerequisite of a certain amount of years, depending on your state, on actually becoming a broker in charge, or as they call it in Colorado, an employing broker. Let's get started just on what it takes to start a real estate brokerage firm. And then as you get into that evolution of year 2 and year 3 and year 4, some of the pitfalls, the traps, the things that you experience. So let's just talk about the startup. One thing I would love to know is just how you decided, all right, I'm done with this. I'm going to go start my own real estate company.
Yeah, I think the first thing to remember is we didn't do it out of anger or ripping off a Band-Aid. So I think, and the other thing is we didn't do it to make money. Maybe I want to make a living, but you don't get rich owning a real estate company. Like that is just one of those, like, you know, just cliches that people hear. And it's true. Like I didn't open a company to become wealthy off the company per se. We do want to be in the black. We do want to help people grow. But the reason we started our own company is we were with the brokerage. And what we were paying in was quickly eclipsing what I could have run a company off of. And I felt like I had the skill set to run a company. And it wasn't hard. We were running a team at the time. So that was an easy transition to just change the flag on our ship and do what we wanted to do. But it was a year process probably before we even jumped ship to fly our own flag. So I think there's a lot of lead up and a lot of planning that you need to do. Because if you're just going to rip the Band-Aid off, the previous ship's going to try and sink you while you're ripping that Band-Aid off, and it's going to be real hard to make a living.
I'm so appreciative that you shared that it took time and effort and thought and prayer and reflection, because as I think about it, I really started contemplating starting my own brokerage firm in 2013. I didn't actually make it happen until November of 2016. So it was 3 years of wrestling with that and talking to people like you and going to our 30 under 30 reunion in 2015 and meeting all these broker owners and saying, okay, like, I don't really know how to do this. Tell me what I don't know. Like, help me understand this. And that's the power of a mastermind group. I will say though, that there is a point that it makes sense to start. Like you can think about it and you can have analysis paralysis forever. And there was that point in November 2016 where we were like wringing our hands, like, oh my gosh, like, are we going to do this? And finally, as our team, we said, we got to go. And you just have not reckless abandon, but you do have to get into that. And so for you, what point was it in that first year where you're like, okay, this is the right time? Or like, was it your deal volume slowed down? Was it recruiting a certain person, finding your location? What were kind of the couple of steps that you went through? Okay, now I'm ready to go.
To launch our company? Yeah. So we had a weird situation to where we were a Prudential franchise and we were forever. We were a top 50 team and they had flipped us a couple of times to Brookfield and then they were going to Brookshire. And we were already a team at that point. And so we're like, do we want to rebrand to Brookshire, all new company, all new colors, all new signs, all the stuff that we provided ourselves, or do we want to look around? And so really just started looking around. We wanted to see that what the options were. And we looked at other traditional brokerages. We had some big companies fly in to take a look at us. We had Keller Williams engage us about doing a market center, exit, whatever it was. We looked at them all. And then we always had the option of the Art of Real Estate boutique. And I'm kind of a spreadsheets nerd. Didn't go to school for it, but I just happened to be. So just kind of ran everything. And none of those really made sense to me. And I've got no problems working for somebody or a broker or anything like that. But the thing that got to me was in the recession, when we're paying 60 grand a year to our company, that is awesome. Keep the power on, keep internet working, doors open. I will pay you gladly for that. It started creeping up to like 250 a year. I could handle it at that point. So, but we had a philosophy already. And fortunately for us, we were a team. So we already kind of had an identity. We've been working with each other since 2007. So we already had a process. So that was the easy part. So I think some people that want to open a company, they need to be understanding that what's their, not necessarily their niche, but what is their style? Because there might already be a company that's out there. And if you're going to try and recruit against a national brokerage that has the same niche, you're kind of a hard time. So you got to figure out why you want to open your company. And that's what we did. We wanted to give it an excellent consumer experience. And we were able to do that because we took that 250 and hired staff, or we call them coordinators, to help us do what we are really good at doing. So that was our niche, to give a better level of service.
One of the best pieces of advice I got from my coach, Chris Oakley in Nashville, he was on episode 5 of our podcast. Chris told me, because I was really wrestling with this in 2016, and I had this appointment in Nashville to go get some coaching, and it was right before I was about to start. And you remember this because I had a stop with you as well and had a discussion about it. And Chris said, look, if you're considering some other franchises, you could always go that way. He's like, as a boutique business owner, I think you'll constantly consider that. If you don't do it now, you're always going to be thinking about what could have happened.
Right.
And I think it's important to really acknowledge that, because yes, if it crashes and burns, you're going to be embarrassed, obviously lose money. But his point was like, look, if you can do this thing on your own, it'll feel far more rewarding than plugging into a franchise. So then I've got to ask the next natural evolutionary question here is, why the Art of Real Estate? How'd you guys come up with that name? What does it mean to you? And how is that directly linked into your purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's it can be seen a little cheesy, the Art of Real Estate. At least I think so. Nobody's ever really said that to me, but we just have a style, the way that we do it. We compartmentalize the way that we do every part of our business. Now, our coordinators don't run the deals. The agents do, but there is an art to it. There is a philosophy. And one of those philosophies for us is like when we list properties, we don't just list them the next day. We have a process that takes a week and a half. But that allows us to get great photography and really set the listing up for success. So there's a process, I guess. And the process of real estate wasn't as cool as the art of real estate. So we kind of went with that because we kind of feel like we're painting a picture when we take a listing. And like, you got to start with certain layers and certain big objects. So that way you can get the end result that it all comes together at the end. So that's kind of how we went with the art of real estate.
I love the name. And the first thing I think about is, it sounds funny enough, but I've been battling this cold. I've got an upper respiratory thing. And what do? I reach for a box of Kleenex. Now, they might be a generic box of tissues, but everybody says a box of Kleenex, right? So what ends up happening is, for me, in listing presentations for years, I have constantly said pricing a property is more of an art than it is a science. So I think if you call your company the Art of Real Estate, it's very apropos, because it's something that I have been saying in Denver well before I ever met you. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense. All right. So let's get really tactical. The coordinator concept, and Eric and I, it was awesome. We both flew. Eric from Boston, Kyle from Denver. We flew to Brad's office, and we spent some time in Columbia. I shouldn't say we flew to Brad's office because we weren't on a Learjet or anything. We flew to North Carolina and drove down to Columbia. We had a great time. We spent a couple of days there, and I'm talking Southern hospitality. Their team just opened their arms up and really welcomed us. These coordinators, it's really cool because you basically are focusing on saying, hey, look, we're going to centralize the operation, which most companies say, hey, agents, you do everything and pay us splits or pay us your fair share or pay us your desk fees. at the Art of Real Estate, you're like, look, we're going to have top-notch, awesome coordinators. It's a dependent model. It's not an independent model. And
Right.
you have, I think it's 6 awesome people that are doing all these different things. So let's actually open this up, because I've seen you
Sure.
do a presentation on this. Who are your coordinators? Not literally by name, but what are the
Right.
titles of the
Sure.
coordinators? And how can someone build a business kind of like the Art of Real Estate? And Brad's looking for expansion. So if anybody wants to do that, just give him a call. But let's talk about the coordinator concept, what they do, what their titles are, because I think this is fascinating. And I have learned as a 3-year startup to Brad's 6-year startup, I modeled a bunch of this as we're talking about this as well.
Yeah, great. So I think it comes back to our philosophy as a company. And that was part of the year process of launching is what is our mission and vision? And it sounds really cheesy, like mission and visions. Everybody rolls their eyes, but it's really the bumpers that keep you going down the path. And so that has been most helpful to us. So don't think about mission and vision as cheesy, but what are your guide paths? And so that has helped us make a lot of great decisions. And part of our mission and vision is to be the experts in everything and to be local market resource, and also to give our clients an exceptional experience, not just say it, but to actually do it. So the problem I find with real estate, knowing a bunch of realtors and real estate agents, is companies are more worried about getting agents and making them happy and keeping those agents rather than what the experience is actually the consumer, which I think exacerbates our problem as a professional entity as how the market actually sees us and people see us. So with all that being said, I think that we went to the coordinator route because I wanted to give those consumers an exceptional experience, but damn to what my agents did. And also agents, if you really do profiles on salespeople, like good salespeople, they are a certain type and support staff is another type, and nobody's better than the other. So we see our company as one big circle and we're a wheel. And if we have a flat spot, you'll feel it, the client will feel it, and it'll be a horrible transaction. So we broke it up, we compartmentalized. And our coordinators, we call them coordinators because they're not assistants. Assistants assist you in doing what you do every day. Coordinators own their role, and you can count on them to do their part. So the way we started was it was me actually. When we started our team, it was 4 people. I did it all: photography, listings, input, lock boxes. And then what I did is as we grew or I needed help, I started delegating. So then I would bring on somebody to fill my role as a, I don't know, closing coordinator, because that was a little bit easier. And then I would hire a photographer, and then so on and so on and so on. So I would build it out. But if I was going to grow a team today, I would have one central person, because I wouldn't have that much business, one central person to do it all, document it all. That's a big part. We'll talk about that in a second. And then expand from there. So our coordinators, we have one. Our first one is our listing coordinator, nothing fancy there, also known as our client care. Her job, or his job, is actually her job is to quarterback the listing process, but the agent, I guess I should say, is the quarterback. The agent's always a quarterback. They're always talking to the client. They're never pushing our clients off on our coordinators, because that's weird. We want them just to talk to our agents, but they're making sure lockbox signs out, photography's out, following up on showings if we need that, all the little stuff that the agent would be bogged down with doing to then make sure the client gets done what needs to be done. And we're very systematic. We list on Fridays, we list on Tuesdays, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we make sure that process can be done so we can hit the process properly. And it's always good because the client knows that they have somebody in the office that they can reach out to if they have questions. So that's one. We have a closing coordinator. And actually, when we step back, our listing coordinator, we decided about 2 years ago, takes our listing clients from start to close. We used to hand them off at contract to our closing coordinator. And one thing about a team or centralized services, you always get the complaint, I don't know who to talk to. I don't know, there's too many people. And that's really aggravating. So we made sure, so I tell you what, Keela, you just take them all the way start to finish. They know you, they trust you, they like you. It's great. And then closings, obviously, we do 2/3 buyers to 1/3 sellers. So it kind of evens out. And then we have a closing coordinator that processes all the paperwork, gets it all where it needs to go, introduces herself to all the vendors, agents, the other agents, the lenders, everybody, making sure they have copies of contracts, making sure that they've got all the documents they need. And that way they become the point of contact on top of following up with those vendors weekly to then update our agents to make sure everything is going well. So that is how that works. Then on the flip side, we've got a marketing side, which we really love. And so we have a full-time videographer. Part of our mission and vision is to be local resources, and we can't do that without local content. So we have a full-time videographer and a photographer, because the amount of listings that we're doing, we do about 335 transactions a year. it made sense to hire somebody. So we have a full-time videographer. I actually have a sales manager between myself and the agents. That's a personal problem, but I've got, 20 something agents, and I travel a lot. I speak a lot. I do a lot. So therefore I need somebody to be present with my agents to help them in case they need that. So it's her job is to kind of really kind of nurture and onboard new agents and stuff like that. So those are a couple of the ones that we have. Of course, we have some social media people. We have some runners. We have some other people. And we're down a coordinator right now. So that's kind of how we compartmentalized it. So that way the agents always know who's doing what and how it's working.
The coolest thing that I remember hearing from you when I was starting my company, because you were giving me some really good feedback, you had just shared the attorney example or the dentist or the doctor. And just for our audience, go through that concept of like, when you go into your doctor's office, you don't expect your doctor to check you in and like take your pulse and do all that. So you built a company based on that same concept. So let's talk through that about your mentality around that, because I thought it was brilliant the first time I heard it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think part of our other mentality is, Kyle, we've been in this thing long enough, dude. Like, we're getting worn out and we'll get worn down quickly. And we've got kids and we've got wives and, it's hard. So what we also want to teach our agents is you don't have to make the same mistakes we made, but you got to work hard. But so we want to love on them as well and take some of this work off of them. So that way they can focus on what they do well and do a really good job, and they'll keep business going. So it's the same model, right? It's the doctor model. They don't do every single bit of it, because if they really checked you in, checked your blood pressure, put you in a room, then put you in the other room that they always put you in for like longer, and then wrote your prescriptions and followed up, like, I don't want that guy cutting on me if he's a surgeon. Like, you got like, focus, buddy. Like, just you and that knife. That's all I need you focused on. So I want to get my agents to that point. Like my business partner, who will do a lot of business this year, 100+ deals. She can run that without a personal assistant because people are compartmentalized and they value her time. They know she's not going to be putting a lockbox on the house. So instantly she's elevated to this level of professionalism where they're going, hey, this is going on. She'll have it taken care of, but she's not going to be running around at 7 o'clock at night putting out yard signs. That's just not how we operate. That's not best use time.
I think it's super important. If you may have missed this as you're listening, Brad is a non-competing broker in charge. Now that concept, I mean, because I'm a producing, and I hate to say competing because that feels weird. It's like, hey, I'm in the trenches with you and I'm here hustling with you like a lot of agents are. What did it take for you, Brad, financially, number one, but then two, just mentally, emotionally, the ego of, I mean, because I feel it's like, hey, I want to be a top producer, and I have been that way. And so how in the world did you make this switch to say, look, I'm going to be servant to my team. Right. And while I might be the owner, while I might be the broker in charge, I work for them. And that's got to be very humbling, but also very intentional.
Yeah. So when leading up to launching, that was one of the questions that came up. Who's going to be the broker? It was three of us at the time, three partners and some agents, and like, who's going to be the broker? Well, the natural fit was me because I was kind of already running the team side anyways. But the other two partners had concerns, like, we don't think that our brokers should compete, because our previous ones always did. And we saw there was never like an actual conflict of interest, but it was awkward, like when we would write offers or have offers written from our broker. So I was like, okay, I can do that. And fortunately, my two partners were doing enough business. And so I work off an override. And so talking about the emotional stress, you don't get over that. It's something I have to work on a lot, literally through coaching and therapy and everything else, because when we have slow months, I have slow months. And then all I want to do is whip and lash the agents for not doing business because I'm not making money. So emotionally, it's a roller coaster from hell, but it is profitable. And I think that's one model people can look at. Because I actually do produce, I don't compete. So fortunately with our business, the way that we operate, I brought in about $10 million this year of referrals that went to my agents. I've recruited some agents, right? So like, I do produce for the company. That's value that we wouldn't have had. And then I worked with 2 builders for a little bit, just on the listing side. So yeah, I do about 13 to 14 million a year, credit, if you will, but I do not go work buyers and sellers at all. I do listing appointments though. So I think that's another thing too. The model that we set up is we wanted to be nurturing. We wanted to help our agents grow, because getting in the business is hard enough. Finding the business is hard enough. So when you get it, you need to nail it. So I do all the listing appointments, almost all of them. with my agents. Very direct way of doing it. I am not the listing agent. I just go and show up as a support staff and say, here's how the company works. I happen to be the broker. If there's ever any problems, I can step in, like a maternity leave, an accident, family emergency, which I've done. I think we've had 14 babies in our business since we've started. So we have definitely closed out some business. So that allows me to help more of a support role and not worry about being out showing houses 8 hours a day. I can be there if the clients need us or our agents need us. So it was tough. It's real tough sometimes.
So let's debunk the myth. You aren't a manager. You're not somewhere that's just punching a clock. You're productive. You're making stuff happen. You're there. You literally are at the right hand of every single agent where you're like, I'm here. I'm with you. I'm in the trenches. The thing that I love about your business that I know from working with you so closely is that you do an amazing job of training, of coaching, consulting, especially new agents, and you do that through lead generation. I think it's really important to talk about. If you're planning on starting a company, you've got to get serious about your processes. You've got to get serious about your systems, and you're going to have some people who are going to say, hey, where are the deals coming from? So let's talk about Curator. Let's talk about Zillow and what not to do with Zillow. And then let's just also talk about all of the resources, because just like when we're kneecap to kneecap in a listing appointment, that seller wants to know, hey, for your commission, and we're not going to talk about percentages, but for your commission, what am I getting? Your agents are saying the same thing. Hey, for my splits, and I know you've got a good split system, and I do too. And the idea that this race to the bottom, if you will, of lowest split structure to the company, I'll tell you what, you can do it the other way, where you can have a healthy, profitable split, but you've got to deliver that value. So let's talk about your marketing processes. We'll talk about Curator. We'll talk about Zillow. We'll also talk about your organic marketing that you do.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, yes, we see our agent's business. I got in at 22, right out of college, in a market I didn't grow up in. Struggled for, gosh knows, the first year to do a couple of deals. And then I kind of partnered up with some people because I saw some avenues where I was like, I can help you with this lower stuff, and kind of built my way in, right?
What was that good old boy network like, breaking into that, huh? Tell me about, that story that you shared the other day about, like, hey, where do you go to church? Not do you go to church, but where do you go to church, and who's your daddy? And like, not in a weird way, but it's just such a different thing for me, not being from the South, to hear that.
Yeah. So it is. It's the South, right? So it's all about relationships and who you know and what you know. So like, even at our listing appointments, I tell my clients, like, as soon as your house hits the market, buyers are going to start calling their mama's friend down the street to see what's going on. And they're going to start chatting about it. Like, is it a divorce? Is what's going on? Right. So it is the South, very chatty Cathy's down here. Yeah, when I was 22, trying to get into a business that was still dominated by 58-year-olds, there were a couple people in their 30s, but guess what? 2008 hit us real hard, and all those guys went out. So then it was me versus the 50-year-olds. There's a couple of 40-year-olds. So bow tie, right? Big beard. I'm a bigger dude by size, so it wasn't that hard to look a little bit older. But yeah, we have to hold ourselves. I just did a whole presentation yesterday to our team on dressing for success, and they do dress up. But I'm talking like coat and tie, because that perception helps become a reality before they even meet you. So I think that's how you kind of debunk the old boy network, but it's also grinding.
Yeah. So leads and prospecting and marketing. What do you think about Curator? Because I know that you are a raving fan.
Yeah.
Zillow, and then also organically breaking into that good old boy and good old girl network.
Yeah. So I look back from the struggles Mary Lane and I had when we were in the business in our 20s, and it was hard. It was hard to get business. And then once you got it, you really got to nurture it to then give you dividends. So I kind of call it like a shiitake mushroom, right? Like, we want your business to kind of ramp up, but like, we want it to explode in like the second year. And to do that, you got to be given business, because if you're given business while you're trying to find business, which we do a lot of that, then at the end of the day, you're gonna have these referrals that come back to you and come back to you and come back to you, and then you will just grow exponentially. That's why our agents see a 35% growth year over year, because they're growing in how we're training them. And yeah, they start with leads. We actually, one of the people I forgot to mention, we have a full-time ISA on staff to help us with doing that on top of our agents scrubbing, because we want them to get in the trenches. So
when Curator, I talked to Jimmy Mackin at Curator, he had started talking about an ISA. So for those that don't know what that acronym means, what's an ISA? What is Jimmy's philosophy on it? How do you plug into Curator through the ISA?
Yeah. So ISA for us is inside sales agent. She's not licensed. She mans the phones. She's not a receptionist. Other people answer the phones. She is straight. That is who all our leads go to, from sign calls to everything else. And we're getting ready to add another one, which is going to be great. So Curator is great. And I want to talk first on how we got there. So we started with the low hanging fruit. We started with the realtor.coms, the homes.com, the Zillows, and we're doing great. We were spending upwards of $150,000 a year on leads, but we were closing over 100 transactions. We're in the black barely, but see, again, my shiitake mushroom, I want to give the business to my agents, let them close it. We make money, but at the end of the day, like, they are the ones that get to nurture those leads up. And then they started changing some algorithms. We were pretty heavy with Zillow, and I didn't like where it was going. So we decided to cut cold turkey. About a year previous, see the whole lead up to everything we do, about a year previous, we signed on with Curator, which is a great company. Jimmy Mackin's now the CEO of that company. He's going to be great at the helm. And they're out of Boston and Orlando as well. But they are almost a social media type of lead generation company. They make it very easy to put out content. That's what they do. They put out content, you blast it, you use these funnels. It works really well. So again, looking back at our mission and vision, going, hey, community resource. That's what we want to be, everything knowledgeable about our market. So we said, you know what, let's cut Zillow. Let's just cut them out cold turkey, January 1 of last year, which we did. And then we hired a full-time videographer. That was like skill, like college degree, excellent guy. And so we did about 173 videos this year of restaurant spotlights, neighborhood spotlights, client testimonials, all these things that we would then blast to our database of 15,000 and market through social media, through Facebook, which we might have spent 20 or 30 grand on. With all that, that helped people in the community know that we're here. Because I think what happens is Zillow's great. Actually, I have no qualms with Zillow. They have a lot. Their leads are very warm. Those are people going, hey, give me some info. But they're very expensive. I was paying about $120 a lead, whether I closed it or not. And I was only closing 6%. So,
and pause for a second. You shared you were spending 6 figures a year on Zillow, like legit.
Yeah.
And we're talking about that's a couple of full-time coordinator salaries just on Zillow.
Right. Yes. I have people in my market that are spending 40 grand a month on Zillow.
And I know
we're a small market.
It.
Yeah. So the one thing with Zillow, I saw coming, and I'm not saying like I told you so, but they're charging the referral fees now, right? It's like the 35%, not just flat $120 a lead, but 35%. And anyways, I won't spend too much time on them. So we decided to chime up, and we said, you know what, we're going all in on content. So we hired that. That has helped our brand be local. That's why you see a lot of small boutiques just be mayors of their towns, they're digital mayors, because that's where they own it. And that has been really, really good to us, because Zillow, people hand raising, ready to buy now. Curator and other platforms are a little bit longer. Those people, 9 out of 10 of those aren't ready to buy. And the average, I think it just ticked up this year to the average Americans in their homes 11 years now. So like most of my people don't care about how to buy a house or whatever, but if I can give them content that I stay top of mind, it's like the new bus ads, right? Like bus benches. Like I'm not doing those, but I'm doing the stuff that has a byproduct of giving myself street cred inside of my community. So that is why we went the Curator route. I highly recommend them. They're not necessarily cheap, but they're a hell of a lot cheaper than Zillow. So I think that's probably, if you were going to start a boutique or start your own brand, like you've got to get your brand out there. And the best way to do that, the cheapest way would be through Facebook, Instagram, kind of paid ads.
And just to give another plug to Curator, Jimmy Mackin, we've had 2 episodes where he's been on. I mean, he's just phenomenal. And what I will say is that they partner with you. I mean, they're not branding it. I mean, you would have no idea that some of the stuff is coming from Curator, and they make you that local expert. And the coolest thing is you own all the content. That is the coolest thing about it. Don't set up your business on something that you don't own. I mean, I remember don't go host your website somewhere where you can't control it. You've got to have access to all of this stuff. It's super important. Okay, Brad, something you mentioned, I'm not going to let it pass us because it's been a key, and I've learned so much from you in the 3 years that I've been a business owner. Therapy. Now, Danielle, you had mentioned this to me, and I've had a multitude of situations where as a leader, really everything comes down to decision-making, absolutely decision-making, making choices, answering questions, making choices. And decision-making for me has been a real struggle. You know, one of the things that on the DISC personality profile, I'm high I, high S. So that can mean that in my weakness, in my flesh, and kind of my sinful nature, and I'm a Christian, I can be impulsive, and I can be absolutely content with the status quo at times. So what happens is those two worlds can be absolutely opposed to each other. Status quo and impulsive, those don't mix. Now, if I'm healthy, I can be inspirational. I can be supportive. I can be a servant. I can be inspiring, like I said, inspirational. I can have all of these great things, but without health, without mental health, that is probably the biggest thing as a CEO and as a broker owner that I've really been working on for the past 3 years. Fortunately, in the building that we started our company in, it's a small office building right downstairs. There's a family licensed psychologist, and I've had teammates go with me. I've had teammates go one-on-one, and all of this is by your suggestion. And I've had resolution, like conflict resolution at this space. So talk about obviously your wife, Danielle, and what her field is, but then also just talk about how you integrate therapy into your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So fortunately, I married a marriage and family therapist. We'll go with that. And a really, really smart one. That just, God, if she had the drive that she does for therapy, I could turn to real estate, we would be making bajillions of dollars. She gets it. She loves it. She wants to be better at it. So it is really, we've been married 12 years, something like that. So we've been married quite a while. And so the way I've incorporated therapy, not just in my personal life, which when I'm voluntold to do that, but more of in the business life, we had a partner mix up a couple years ago. Not a mix up, we had a partner spat, if you will, just people going different directions. And we tried coaching. We had brought people in to help facilitate, try and work to the root of it. And, just like anything else, you have a partner for 10 years, you kind of grow, you can grow apart. Like you're humans, like people grow certain ways. All of a sudden you like olives, the other day you don't like olives. It's really weird. So people grew apart. And so they recommended that we go to business therapy, which was interesting. It is separate therapy with the same therapist that can then start seeing idiosyncrasies and things that line up to help coach us to work with the other one. Unfortunately, it didn't work, but actually it did work because it helped us getting to the idea that it wasn't going to work. And then we peacefully split ways, which was 4 or 5 years ago now. So I still, from time to time, will go to business therapy. I have myself a real estate coach still to this day. And actually, I just hired a nutritionist from Texas about 3 months ago. She's yet to put me on a diet, which is kind of what I thought was coming, but it's more holistic, dude. Like I have been sleeping better. I've been getting my mind right. I'm drinking kombucha. Like, I'm going to turn into a hippie here pretty soon, but it's been great. It really has. Like she has put some stuff out there. And I think what I wanted to offer more than anything else is that you need people to rely on, because when you're at the top of your company, or the top of what you do, you need people still to press down on you and say, you know what, dude, you need to drink kombucha because this is going to make your gut better. And if it makes your gut better, it makes you happier. If it makes me happier, I'm nicer to my agents. And guess what? If I'm nicer to my agents, they sell houses. Like it's all intertwined. So I think if anything, therapy is a great way to do that. Absolutely do that. We had co-pastors for a while at our church, and we had them go because they're co-pastors that were kind of put together. They went to like business therapy. So it's not a lot of mushy, but it's more of a, why do you feel this way when he does this or she does that? And it really, really helps. And it can be, people can have a stigma to it, but I think it's one of the best ways to work through problems. Because a lot of times your problems are your mama problems way back when you were 4, and you're putting them on the people you work with today. And that's just not fair.
Yeah, you make such a good point. And I think it's really important to debunk that. There's a lot of people that feel like it's taboo. And I think it's really important. You did a great job of saying like, here's exactly why we do it. And I will say that has been one of the best pieces of advice, the coordinator concept and also the therapy concept that I've actually integrated into my own business within the past 3 years. And what I'll share with you is I still write checks. I know a lot of people think like, all right, man, a millennial still writes checks, but I still do. Just like you, I started when I was 22. So I've been in this now 15 years. And in the regarding section or the for section of the check, when I write it to Galena Rhodes, the psychologist, Wash Park Psychology, I write Calibrate Coaching because that's what I believe it is. Yeah. And every now and again, it blends over into personal because we are one holistic being. But what I will share with you, and I've shared this openly with a lot of people, I realized without feeling like this was, me needing to go to AA. And I think Alcoholics Anonymous is a very important 12-step process for people that need that. But I just knew with all the happy hours, all of the celebrations, all the big deal closings and all this other type of stuff, I just, alcohol got a little bit out of control for me. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I think that if I just kind of tighten this screw a little bit and really work on it. And so through therapy, through talking with my wife, Courtney, I said, look, last year, and it's been a full year, last October, late October, right around Halloween, I said, I'm going to limit my drinking and I'm going to keep track of it. And I actually have a tracker on the wall that I'll post to Instagram at some point later this month. And my goal, and I don't know where I came up with this, but I said, gee, it would be great. And at first, like everything, it's just like, all right, let's just cruise through as many days as possible without drinking. And what ended up happening is, like, I love my backyard opportunities. I love to go to Columbia and hang out with Brad and Eric, go to River Rat, get a beer, and just hang out. So it's like, I want to pick my spots instead of like go completely cold turkey. And the deal was, let's get 20 days a month. Let's get 20 days a month of no drinking. And on this calendar, just print it out the month of August, the month of May, whatever it is, and blue check mark means I made it with no drinks. And, a red X or a pink X on this calendar means that, hey, I decided to pick my spot, and that's when I was going to drink. And I have been the most productive this year. Right. I've hit a GCI, gross commission income, for me personally. I've hit an absolute high on that. And my therapist looked at me after sharing that. She's like, you know what? Courtney said this too. We may not have you drink much anymore after you see all those benefits. So whether it's sleeping, and Stephanie Lanier, who you referred me to, and she was an absolute rock star speaker, a TEDx speaker. Go look up in our show notes here, Stephanie Lanier. She talks about self-care, and she has some real world major stuff with a special needs child. She's running a brokerage firm in North Carolina. I mean, she's doing amazing things. And Stephanie talks about sleep. She talks about sweat. She talks about being social with a mom's group that goes through all these different things. And it's super important. You're right. Like the mental game and how that connects to your physical. And I did a talk on this. It's actually a podcast episode where Harvard Business Review talked about the making of a corporate athlete. And it linked, how athletes, and this is like a study from back in 2000 or something, but how athletes really gear themselves up for success. And people that are entrepreneurs and successful in the corporate world, you've got to focus on what you're eating and how you're sleeping and all your different habits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think I've been going a little round and around with the wife in the last year about drinking too. She's seen some benefits for not doing it as much. And obviously I go to recruit an agent. I travel once a week, just damn near about. So like I go to happy hours, and I mean, it could be said real estate agents have an affinity for drinking too much. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I just got back from NAR, and everything's based around alcohol. Not that everybody was overindulging, but the way that science says makes you feel. And I feel like as a business owner for years, I use that as a de-stressing coping mechanism. And it's very easy to run into that. And fortunately, I've been scaling back a good bit too. And I feel probably the best I've ever felt. And I think the easy answer is just drink a little bit, detox, decompress. And I think that's where, if you want to run a company, you can't do that that much. Like if you come in just sloshed every morning, like you're not, mind's right, your body's not right, you're not acting right, people don't want to be around you, you're going to be the downfall of your company.
The biggest benefit that I noticed for me is just simply I sleep incredibly. And you shared that with diet and focusing on what you're putting into your body from a food and fuel standpoint. Yeah. But when I go 3, 4, 5 days without drinking, and my goal is obviously 4 or 5 days a week, and then, maybe use the weekends as the example. It's kind of like, I remember I had my first teammate, my first like core teammate, this gal named Casey, would say, hey, no drinking on a school night. We just don't do that. And what ended up happening for me is I would sleep like a baby. And that is so restorative and so important if you're going to start a business. All right, as we end our time, and there's always this tension for me as a podcast host. Like, I just want this thing to go forever. But the reality is we all have businesses and lives and families to get back to. So I ask a couple of questions to all of my guests to end our show. So Brad Allen, here we go. There's a couple of questions. You've had some amazing mountaintop experiences as a realtor. You've been doing it since you're 22. What are some of the more memorable things that you've accomplished where you're like, pinch me, I can't believe that just happened?
A lot of people want to, in our market, be like, oh, I got 30 under 30. It's so great. And it's a great accomplishment. And it's not we didn't win. I didn't beat out other people. It's just kind of my DNA, what made up to that. So that helped launch. That didn't give me the ego to do what I do. That gave me the the benefit to do what I do. And so it gave me the self-awareness, and it gave me the ego to step forward. So I think really what's really hit the high notes for me is seeing agents, my agents, some of my agents, and I actually don't call them my agents, I call my team members anywhere we are, go from being a teacher, which we need, and God loves teachers, and I do too, but like to making over 6 figures take home in 2 years. So to me, that's the stuff that makes me happy, because they're good people and they're doing good things and they're helping people in one of the most traumatic times of their lives. And it sounds, I'm making a big deal of it, but it's true. So like that's what gets me. It's not the big accolades. It's not being featured in a magazine like I was just featured in for my ideas. It was the little stuff like that. It's the day-to-day of making differences and helping people see the potential they have. So that's one of the bigger accomplishments I've had.
Gosh, that's amazing. And it's so true. Okay, next question. I think especially younger people, you mentioned that you got started when you were 22. I think a lot of young people get all bent out of shape, all worked up when they make a mistake. You
Right.
probably have some coordinators. You probably have some brand new agents that have been in for just a year or two. And you mentioned that shiitake mushroom. So what do you think separates successful people from folks who are maybe more mediocre as it relates to how they handle when they make a mistake?
They get up, they get the fuck over it. Sorry, Kyle, I know it's not right, but like, that's it, dude. I make mistakes all the time. I tell our clients, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to try and fix it. And I used to work in restaurants back in high school and college. And there was a thing, it was like, fix it and fix it fast. That's it. Fix it and fix it fast. And if you can, move on. Don't dwell on it. Tomorrow's another day. Like, you just can't, you start dwelling on the stuff, man. Like, you're in your own head, pushing yourself down. Get over it. Just move on. And you know what? Worst comes to worst, let the client go so you can really let go of it. But I mean, I've made some horrible mistakes. I've been in front of our real estate commission. I mean, I've never had any ethics violations filed against me, but like, if you're in it long enough, you're going to push the boundaries that you think are right. You know what? Did I make the right decision? The real estate commission said no, but I still believe in what I did. So I got to live with that. So I think just get over it. Like, get on with it. Just move on.
I love it. Fix it, forget it. Some of the archives, as I think of podcast guests, previous podcast guests, ghosts of Calibrate Real Estate. Amanda DeVito Parle talks about flushing it. She was taught by her dad. She's like, hey, look, you go to the bathroom every day. You flush that. You don't just leave it sitting there. Ashton Ernst, who I had just recently, she said, hey, you know what? So what? Now what? One of my favorite cliches is the cover up is way worse than the crime. And just a couple of just different thoughts about how you deal with failure. It's going to happen, and own it. Yeah. You're a leader. You own it. You do not chastise your teammates. You do not put them out as a sacrificial lamb. Okay, final question. Final question here. It's the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. Comes from a Christian song called Dear Younger Me by the band Mercy Me. The idea here is you're writing a letter to yourself, Brad. You started when you were 22. I started when I was 22. What's the advice you wish you knew when you were 22, now that you've seen some things and you've done some things and you've been there and done that?
Man, that's a great question. And in true fashion, I wish I wouldn't know anything different, because honestly, I look at people today that come walk in my door and they go, I'm getting licensed in real estate. I want to work for you. I'm thinking, you're the dumbest person I've ever met. Like, do you know how hard this is going to be? Like, why would you leave your 9-to-5 job to come try and make a living? Which most people like, oh my gosh. But like, no, I think if I was told that, if I was actually made that I wouldn't even tried. And I think I was dumb enough to try. And I think I call it failing forward. Like, you're going to fail in this business. Like, that's what makes you who you are. That's what gives you the knowledge. That's why I feel like I'm the best broker, because I've probably made all those mistakes. So the best, just keep going. I mean, that's what the only effort is just some encouragement, because the people that make in this business are self-starters and they're grinders. And people that try and put up those walls are like, do you know how hard it's going to be? Don't do that. Don't do this. Then I wouldn't be where I am today if I had that. So it's not that I wouldn't look forward to some feedback, but I think that could have derailed me in a certain, like, my dad told me, go get a job that's recession proof. I'm like, cool. And then here I am, right through the recessions. So yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know.
What I appreciate about your answer is it's so true. It's about what we talked about as it relates to failing and making mistakes. And I just finished, I know I'm like late to the party, but just finished reading the book by John C. Maxwell called Failing Forward. And the thesis of that book is that John C. Maxwell points out that it doesn't matter if you're super famous, super successful, or you're just getting your start. you are going to make mistakes. And
Right.
it's not about the mistakes, it's how you respond to them, and
Right.
further, how you profit from them. That is the key. And it's such great advice. It's such a great way to end podcast number 98. Man, we are knocking on the door of episode 100. It's cool because we've already, actually, Brad, we've got both of those episodes, 99 and 100, already in the books. I try not to do a lot of that where we put it in the can, but Karen Briscoe's coming back for episode 99. Rory Vaden, New York Times bestseller of Take the Stairs, is episode 100. Huge celebration. First time I've shared that publicly here. And so catch those episodes. Also, for backlog episodes for In the Archives, Mary Lane Sloan, episode number 8. Check that out. Eric Rollo was episode number 97, excuse me. And Eric joined Brad and I on a live interview in Brad's office on episode number 4. So check those out. Excuse me if I can speak. Check those out. And for Brad Allen, I say thank you, Brad. For Kayla Davis, our podcast producer, I'm Kyle Malnati. And as I love to say, I will see you around the neighborhood. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Later. Thanks, man.